man who walked away from the British Army, helped steal religious artifacts from over 40 churches, was convicted twice, and still built one of YouTube's most watched property restoration channels, with more than 600 subscribers watching him work on a French convent as recently as this year. That man is Billy Petherick, and the woman at the center of this story is his partner Gwendoline Mouchel, the quiet heir to one of France's oldest industrial fortunes. By the time this video ends, you'll understand exactly how this story became something that no YouTube algorithm could have predicted, and why it still isn't finished. Every story has a starting point. For the Pethericks, it starts not in a chateau, not on a camera, but in the household cavalry, the regiment responsible for guarding the British royal family. Billy Petherick, born in Greenwich in southeast London, served as a trooper in one of the most recognizable military units in the world. The red uniforms, the ceremonial horses, the stoic stillness outside Buckingham Palace. That was Billy's life in 2009, when then his half-sister died. The loss alone was devastating, but what followed made it worse. According to prosecution testimony later heard at Bulford Military Court in Wiltshire, Petherick was bullied by colleagues in the aftermath of her death. Whatever the exact nature of that treatment, the effect was the same. On July 30, 2009, Billy Petherick walked away from the British Army and never went back. He had already been visiting his parents, who had relocated to France. He knew the country, he spoke enough of the language, and now, with nothing left keeping him in Britain, he crossed the Channel and disappeared. For 12 years, the British military listed him as absent without leave. His unit, according to Captain Daniel Lawler, who later prosecuted the case, had no intention of having him return. But the Army does not simply forget. Desertion is not a misdemeanor. It is a charge that stays open until it is legally closed, regardless of how much time passes. Billy Petherick was still, technically, a fugitive. He just didn't know yet that television was about to find him. And here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. France suited Billy. It had space, crumbling beauty, and a culture that didn't require constant explanation of where he'd been. Not long after arriving, he met Gwendoline Mouchel. She was 24 at the time. He was 27. She was from Cherbourg in Normandy, had worked in retail management, and carried herself quietly. What Billy did not immediately know, or perhaps did not fully appreciate, was the weight of what Gwendoline stood to inherit. Her family line traced back to the Le Soufrière Yeast Empire, one of France's most significant industrial enterprises, founded in the 19th century and still in family hands. When Gwendoline's mother passed away, the inheritance that came to her was substantial enough to change the direction of her entire life. In 2016, Gwendoline used that inheritance, combined with bank loans, to purchase Chateau de la Basmenée in the Mayenne region of Pays de la Loire. The price was $1,050,000. The property had been owned by a Russian couple who had left it in near ruin. It had no functioning electricity, no running water. 6 cottages sat on 60 acres of parkland, a private chapel, a traditional walled garden, and somewhere between 50 and 60 rooms, depending on who was counting, a number Billy and Gwendoline famously never agreed on. Billy's brother Michael joined them shortly after. He fell in love with the project almost immediately, moved into the old gardener's cottage on the property, and began renovating it himself. What had started as a couple's project became a family operation. Billy and Michael tore into the main house. Michael documented his own work. Their parents were nearby. Friends drifted in and out of the project, some of them eventually starting their own channels. The Pethericks were not yet a YouTube channel. They were just a family rebuilding a house. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. Channel 4 in the United Kingdom was already running Escape to the Chateau, a long-form documentary series following British couples who bought French properties and renovated them. The Pethericks story was exactly the kind of content that show was built for. They were young. They were ambitious. The Chateau was extraordinary. In 2018, Billy and Gwendoline appeared on the first series of the spin-off, Escape to the Chateau, DIY. The show aired to a large audience. Viewers fell for the property, the project, and the personalities. Billy was hands-on and driven. Gwendoline was measured and thoughtful. Michael was the cheerful, hard-working older brother who'd given up everything in England to help renovate a chateau in France. What the show's producers did not know, and what Billy had presumably hoped would stay buried, was that the broadcast had just done something the British Army had failed to do in 12 years. It put an exact address on screen: Chateau de la Basmenée, Pays de la Loire, Mayenne. The military tracked the location. Billy was identified. And while the legal machinery took time to move, the outcome was now only a matter of when, not whether. In August 2021, Billy Petherick returned to the United Kingdom and was arrested. He appeared at Portsmouth Magistrates Court the following month, charged with going absent without leave. At his court-martial at Bulford Military Court in Wiltshire that December, he pleaded guilty to one charge of desertion. Judge Advocate Robert Hill sentenced him. The words he used became widely reported. He told Billy, "You have no interest in the Army, and the Army has no interest in having you back." Billy was dismissed from the military. He avoided a prison sentence. Most people who followed the channel at that point assumed that was the end of it. Most people stopped here. But the real story starts right now. In Yurd's homing chains, Thief. It predates the Chateau. It predates the YouTube channel. And it is the part that, when it finally became public, genuinely changed the way long-term viewers understood everything they had been watching. In 2014, 2 years before Billy and Gwendoline bought Chateau de la Basse-Meunier, Billy Petherick entered churches across northern France, not to pray, not to look at the architecture. He entered during normal visiting hours, used a crowbar to force open locked chests, and removed religious artifacts, chalices, ciboriums, pattens, tabernacle keys. These are not common antiques. They are consecrated items, often centuries old, held by churches that have no budget to replace them. The thefts took place across Brittany and Anjou, approximately 40 churches, dozens of individual items. The stolen goods were sold in two ways. Some went through eBay, shipped back to the United Kingdom. Others went to an old family acquaintance, a second-hand dealer in the town of Retiers. Gwendoline was present during some of these incidents, waiting in the car. According to what she later told the court, she was playing on her phone and working on her marketing dissertation. As for why she did not intervene, her explanation, reported at the time of the trial, was simple. Her partner, she said, did not have a high opinion of the church. The thefts happened in 2014. The criminal trial happened in February 2024. 10 years passed between the crime and the conviction. At the criminal court of Rennes, both Billy Petherick and Gwendoline Mouchel were found guilty. Billy, who had also spent approximately 3 months in pre-trial detention, received a 12-month suspended prison sentence and a fine of $15,000. Gwendoline received a fine of $10,000. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. The conviction in February 2024 landed on an audience that was, by that point, deeply invested. The Pethericks YouTube channel had hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Their content had evolved from raw Chateau renovation footage into something more polished, a genuine property restoration series, filmed consistently, uploaded regularly, with a loyal viewership that had followed along for years. When the church theft story broke in major British outlets, the reaction inside the comments was not uniform. Some viewers left immediately and permanently. For them, watching Billy work on a French convent, which was now the family's new project after the Chateau, felt impossible once the nature of what he had stolen was understood. Sacred objects taken from places of worship, many of them rural communities, with no means of replacing them. Others stayed. They separated the creator from the criminal record. They pointed to the gap between 2014 and 2024, argued that the channel itself represented a kind of transformation, and continued watching. The channel did not collapse. The subscriber count continued to grow. By early 2026, the Pethericks had passed 600,000 subscribers, with more than 139 million total views across their catalog. But the view counts on individual videos had become more volatile. Engagement was uneven. In the silence from the channel on the subject of the conviction, no direct on-camera acknowledgement, no formal statement, no explanation given to the audience, became, for many followers, a story of its own. The number that came next, nobody who followed this channel expected it. After the Chateau, the family moved their focus to a second major project, an 18th-century convent in the town of Ernay in northern France, located approximately 5.5 kilometers west of Chateau de la Basse-Meunier. If the Chateau was the project that put the Pethericks on the map, the convent was the project they chose after everything fell apart. The scale of the restoration was enormous. Old walls, structural unknowns, decades of neglect packed into a religious building that had outlasted the community it once housed. Billy and Michael began dismantling, assessing, rebuilding. The channel kept uploading. In late 2023, in what became one of the more unusual restoration sequences on any YouTube channel in this niche, Billy organized the transport of a historic pipe organ from the Roman Catholic Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Norwich, England, all the way to the Convent chapel in Ernay. The organ was dismantled, loaded, driven across the channel, and installed in the chapel Billy was in the process of restoring. The videos covering the process ran across 18 separate uploads. That level of ambition, and the willingness to document every step of it, is part of what has kept the audience returning. Whatever the legal history, the actual content of the channel reflects a genuine and sustained commitment to these buildings. Michael's presence throughout this period has remained consistent. His own channel, which he had been running in parallel for years, found a large audience quickly. The wider Petherick extended family, parents, friends, collaborators, continued to orbit the projects. She never talked about this publicly, until now. The information circulating within the community following the Pethericks in early 2026, discussed in fan spaces, community boards, and in channels dedicated to covering the broader Chateau YouTube world, points to a significant personal change. According to reported accounts from that period, Billy Petherick and Gwendoline Mouchel have separated. The reports indicate Billy returned to the United Kingdom, while Gwendoline remained in France. Neither Billy nor Gwendoline has made a direct, on-camera statement publicly confirming or detailing this separation as of the time of this video. What is confirmed? Billy's presence on the channel has become inconsistent. Gwendoline, who was always a quieter presence in the content, has become less visible still. Michael Petherick's position appears to be the most stable. He has continued working on the Convent. His own content continues. The Pethericks channel itself has not gone dark. It has continued uploading, but the shape of what it is and who is at the center of it has shifted in ways that viewers have noticed and continue to ask about. There is also an uncomfortable irony sitting underneath all of this that rarely gets named directly. The woman who funded the entire Petherick project with her inheritance, Gwendoline, has largely disappeared from the content that her money made possible. The convent that Billy and Michael are now renovating exists in Ernay because of the financial foundation she provided. The chateau that launched the channel was purchased with her inheritance and her family's resources. Where Gwendoline goes from here, and what form her life takes without the YouTube identity that was always, in some sense, built around her property and her money, is a question that has no confirmed answer yet. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got. Until now, there is a version of the Petherick story that the algorithm rewards. It goes, couple buys crumbling chateau, family joins the project, television comes calling, channel grows, renovation continues. That version exists. It is real. The views prove it. But there is a second version running alongside it, and it has been visible to anyone paying close attention since at least 2021. Billy Petherick deserted a military post after a personal tragedy and built a new life in another country. That life was partly funded by the woman he was building it with. He later participated in the systematic theft of objects from dozens of places of worship, objects that communities depended on, objects that were sold online and through back channels for money. He was eventually caught, convicted twice across 2 separate jurisdictions, and is now, by most available accounts, no longer living in France with the woman who made the project possible. Through all of this, the AWOL, the thefts, the court-martial, the criminal conviction, the channel kept growing. That is not a condemnation. It is an observation about how YouTube works. Audiences form attachments to content and to the personalities delivering it. They compartmentalize. They choose what they want to continue watching. The Pethericks audience did that. Hundreds of thousands of them. What the channel is now, and what it becomes in the next year, will depend entirely on whether Billy and Michael can carry it forward, and whether the audience they built will follow them wherever the Convent project leads next. The most honest thing you can say about the Petherick story is this: everything that looks like chaos was visible from the beginning if you knew where to look. A man running from his past, a woman with a fortune and a vision, a family that turned a crumbling French chateau into a YouTube channel, and a legal history that caught up with them in stages, each revelation arriving just when the audience had settled into watching the next project. The Convent in Ernay is ongoing. Michael is still filming. The channel is still uploading. What happens between Billy and Gwendoline, and whether their story has a public resolution or simply goes quiet, is still being written as of mid-2026. Do you think an audience owes a creator loyalty regardless of what they did before the camera turned on? Or does what happened in those French churches in 2014 change the way you see everything that came after?